Good evening and welcome to another Tom Talk Live. All right, so we're going to get moving with our topic for tonight. And if you read the thumbnail, you know what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about how to navigate big life changes. And of course, this is something we all deal with, right? Life changes are something that happens whether you want them to or not, right? Change is inevitable. It is one of the only constants, right? Change. And so we all go through those times, right? And, sometimes we anticipate those changes. There's certain changes that happen kind of um, naturally, kind of as this pattern of life happens. We go through different phases, we go through different changes as we grow up, as we move through different kind of parts of our lives. But then some changes are really not predictable, right? That things that happen that we weren't expecting. And sometimes things that happen that we didn't want to happen, right? Some big life changes are things that are not welcome, that we did not want, but happened regardless. And then some changes are changes that we sought, changes that we pursued and wanted to bring about. And so there's a whole range of different kind of feelings and challenges that go along with change. But I do think that there's some commonalities that we see across all change that can still be challenging, right? Even if it's a change that we want and are inviting into our lives, it can still be difficult. And so, kind of as a metaphor to look at life and the many changes that come along, I wanted to compare it to going on a trip, right? Going on a journey, and how a lot of times on a trip, on a journey, we run into unexpected detours, right? Where we have it mapped out, we know exactly how we want our trip to go, and sometimes it doesn't go the way that we planned, right? We end up having to make detours. We end up having to make significant changes to our trip. And so I'm reminded of a road trip that I went on with a good friend of mine. He used to live out in Las Vegas and was moving back towards the east, Florida, and I can't remember exactly where he was moving. I think he moved to Missouri first. But anyway, I was helping him move, and so I flew out to Las Vegas. We stayed there for a few days, kind of spent a little bit of time there, and then packed up his car. He had already sent some of his stuff and packed it all up and started the journey east. And we got down onto I-40, and we were heading across, and this was during wintertime. And as we were approaching, coming towards Amarillo, Texas on I-40, we got word that there was a big snowstorm, right? It already started snowing a little bit where we were, but we were watching news reports, weather reports that were talking about how like the highway was shut down. You couldn't even get across 40 going across the panhandle of Texas there. So we were like, oh man, what are we going to do? We don't want to get stuck in the snow. We ended up pulling off. We stayed at a hotel that night and kind of decided, well, we need to come up with a new game plan, right? This was a major detour, a major disruption in our plan to just, it was basically a straight shot across 40 for us. So there really wasn't going to be that many changes or detours. It was pretty much, one road the whole way. And now we were going to have to think of a different route. So we decided to take a rather long detour. We thought, well, if there's a lot of snow, even back roads are going to be snowed out. So we need to make a huge change in our plans. And so we ended up going south, I think from Flagstaff down in New Mexico, all the way down to El Paso. And then we cut across from El Paso, went all the way through Texas, across that way, up into Arkansas and then Tennessee. And so that was quite a major change. And of course, if you've ever been through Texas, it just takes forever to get through Texas. But we saw some really beautiful things, some really amazing sights that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. And so this ended up being kind of a nice detour. It ended up, it did extend the trip out a bit, but we ended up really getting to enjoy some really cool scenery that we wouldn't have seen otherwise. And so sometimes detours can end up being a good thing. Sometimes they can be a struggle, right? But either way, they can be very challenging. And so I wanted to talk about big life changes and kind of what are some strategies that we can implement to better handle those big changes that come along. So the first thing I want to talk about is understanding the impact that change has on us, right? It's kind of just recognizing that change really does affect us, right? Especially when it's a big change. Sometimes we don't even like small changes. We tend to be creatures of habit, right? We like kind of things being the same. For most of us, anyway. Maybe there's a few of you out there that thrive on change, but I know for me, like I like knowing certain things are going to be the same. So a disruption of that can kind of throw me off a little bit. And so, of course, when it's a big change, right, that can have a real big impact on us. It can actually cause us to deal with a lot of kind of inner turmoil and mixed feelings and just struggles, even to the point where we can, start to question who we are, what our purpose is. We start to really think about like, what am I doing? What is my life going to be like now that this major change has happened? And so, what do I do? And so, I wanted to share kind of a personal story about that with you. A change that my wife and I, or our whole family, really is going through right now, and that is my son just graduated from high school. We're very proud of him. We're excited for him, and he's going to be going off to college in the fall. And so we've been going through all the processes and all the things that go along with that. But it has definitely been a challenge for us. It's a big change. He's not going to be staying with us anymore. He's going to be living on campus and away from us. And he's spent pretty much his whole life with us. There hasn't been many times in his lifetime that he wasn't here with us. And so that is going to be a big challenge for us, and something that we're already kind of struggling with, or at least I'll speak for myself. It's been a struggle for me, kind of wrapping my head around that, and it brings up all kinds of emotions. It brings up all kinds of thoughts and questions, and we start to, or at least I start to tell myself these different stories, and I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. But it's okay to just recognize that it is a struggle, right? Recognize the impact that it has on us. It's okay, right? It's okay for us to feel that way. Not that we want to, but that it is normal, right? It is normal to feel those ways. And there can be all kinds of things wrapped up in that, even in changes that we knew were coming. Like in my case, right? We knew he was going to be graduating high school, right? He's been moving along. It's kind of like this slow, steady train, right? Don't make me cry. Absolutely. And so yeah, it's bittersweet because on the one hand, we're super proud of him, right? It's this amazing accomplishment. He did so great in school. We're so proud of him in so many different ways. And we look back over, this time that he has spent in school and just how much he's grown and developed in that time. But then there's kind of a bitterness there, and there's a little bit of grief there because he's moving on. He's moving on to this next phase of life, and you can't go backwards, can you? You can't go back to how things were before. You can't rewind time. It only goes one direction. And so kind of recognizing that there is a loss involved many times in change, right? The way things used to be, it's not going to be like that anymore, right? It's going to be this new way, whatever this is that we're moving into, good or bad. The old way is going to be gone, right? And so it's okay to grieve that. It's okay to recognize that even if it's a good thing, there is something that's going to be missed. There is something that's going to be lost. And so let me know in the comments if this is something you've experienced where you've maybe had mixed feelings about a change in your life where there was a good aspect, but there's also maybe something that you were mourning, something that you were feeling a loss about. And so I think it's important for us to think about that, to consider the impact and be able to feel those feelings. I think it's important in general, right? It's important for us to really feel the feelings that we have and not try to push them down, not try to ignore them or dismiss them, but to allow ourselves to feel them and process through them. I think that's a good thing, and not holding on to them and not lingering and allowing it to control us, but just kind of letting it flow through, feeling it, and then letting it move on. I think that's the healthiest way to deal with those difficult emotions. So let's go on to the next point here. So if we look at understanding the impact change has on us, we talked about that. the next thing I want to mention is recognizing the opportunity that change brings, right? So there's an opportunity involved when change happens, right? So um, a lot of times there are changes that we want to bring about, and we want things to be different than they were before, and we struggle to do that. So when there is something, a transition in our life, when there is some significant shift, when we're moving into a new chapter, a new phase, a new season, whatever you want to call it, realize that this is an opportunity, right? To kind of reflect, to reevaluate, to reassess, to think about how do I want my life to be moving into this new reality, right? This new change that's happening, whatever it is, however, and sometimes it's not what we wanted, but it's what it is, It's just the reality of the situation. This is our new reality. So I want to make the most of that, right? Whatever this new shift is, it's an opportunity for me to reevaluate and think, what do I want my life to be now? And that takes time, right? It takes time to really sit and think about that, to consider where we are now and where we want to be in this new reality, to slow down and just really take in and kind of ask ourselves, if this is a journey, right? If this is a journey that I'm on, what destination am I heading towards now? Right. So if I go back to my metaphor about this road trip that I was on with my good friend, we had to make this detour. We had to consider, all right, where are we going now? Like, what is the rest of this trip going to look like? It's going to be different than it was before, right? So what do we want to do now? And so there's new opportunities that we could kind of look into, right? New things that we were going to be traveling by, new stops that we could make and experiences that we could have, because now we were going a different way than we were before. And that's how it is in life, right? So there's a big change. Something's going to be different. What are the opportunities that are presenting themselves now? What's the most I can make of this new reality that I find myself in? And so it's good to have that chance to really think through, right? Where am I at? Where am I going? So I want you to think about that for a moment, right? Think of maybe you're in the midst of a big change, right? Maybe there's something significant, or maybe you're just right on the cusp. Maybe there's some big change coming. I'm friends with a couple different people that are about to get married, right? And so that's going to be a big change for them. And so they're thinking about that. And maybe you're already going through a change, right? Maybe you just went into a new season of life. Stop and think for a moment, right? Where am I headed now? What do I want my life to be like? And kind of consider that. It's a time to reassess your goals, right? What do I really want out of my life? It's okay for those things to change, right? It's okay to adjust what our goals are. It's okay to adjust what we're working towards as we move into these new seasons. It just takes the time to really consider and reassess them. And so recognizing the opportunities, right? That's our second point. Let's move on to the next one here, which is building up resilience and spotting challenges, right? Building up resilience and spotting those challenges. So let's talk about resilience first. So what are we talking about when we're talking about resilience? Basically, if we recognize that change can be difficult, right? And it can bring up a lot of negative emotions. It can bring up a lot of anxiety, stress that can make us very anxious. We can build up a resilience to that so that when it happens, right, we are able to deal with it in a better, healthier way, right? That's essentially what resilience is. It's not that we can get rid of change. It's not that we can get rid of the negative emotions that come along with it. It's that we can be better prepared to take those feelings and those changes on. And so there's a few different tools that I think can help with building resilience in our lives. The first one is basically still having some routines, right? So in the midst of big changes, sometimes we feel untethered, right? That's the word I like to use for it because, we were attached to a certain way of doing things. And now that attachment has been severed. And so we feel like we're just kind of free falling, right? That can be the sensation that we're having. Like things are out of control, we're not oriented like we used to be. We feel disoriented. And so being able to still find those points of attachment, right? Those routines, those things that we can control and have consistency in our life. We should still hold on to those things, right? And rely on that routine to kind of keep us grounded, keep us feeling secure still, right? We can call those anchor points, right? So identify what are those anchor points in your life and make sure that they're healthy ones, right? Sometimes when we feel out of control, we try to enforce or impose control in unhealthy ways. But finding healthy ways where we can still find routine, we can still find anchor points that will keep us feeling good and moving forward. And then again, that mental strength, right? Building up mental and emotional resilience. And I think part of that comes from kind of an internal security, right? Where we have built up a confidence in ourselves. We have built up kind of a trust that we will make it through, right? Where we build up that ability to rely on ourselves. And that's not easy to do. And I think this is an area that so many people can grow in, where when we become more confident in ourselves, and I'm not talking about being cocky about, I'm confident that I can do this or that or the other, right? I'm just confident in who I am. I'm confident in my being. I'm confident that I'll be able to handle this situation. And if I can't handle it, I can turn to those around me that I trust, that I rely on, that will be there for me. And that's really another component, right? Finding a support system. We see a significant difference in people that have a support system versus people that don't have that, right? So building up friends and family that are able to be people that you turn to in times of need and that you're there for them when they need you, right? It goes both ways. So building up that resilience. And then the other one was spotting the challenges. And this is good to do, especially if you foresee the change coming, right? If you know there's going to be a change, right? If it's something that you kind of see coming down the road, right? Just anticipate that you are going to feel those feelings, right? Know that it's going to be there. Now, this isn't always easy to do because, like I said, with ours, like we knew this was coming. We knew James was graduating high school, that he was going to be going to college. But, even still, it kind of hit me, right? Like I didn't really, I guess, not realize it, but just really internalize it, like see it as something that was actually happening. It was always kind of in the distant future. It was always an abstract idea, but now it's concrete. Now it's happening like right now. And so it sneaks up on you. So if you can kind of anticipate it and prepare for it and just kind of be like, all right, this is coming. It's going to be okay. We're going to make it through. And just kind of already start building up that resilience moving into those changes, right? Okay, let's go on to our next one here. We talked about building up resilience, spotting challenges. Next, I want to talk about seeing yourself in a new light. So this is really one of the beautiful things that comes from change, because change essentially allows us, right, to adapt and grow in a new situation, right? If we're always in the same environment, always in the same situation, it can be difficult to grow, right? Because we just we get into our patterns, we get into our certain routines, and we kind of get stagnant, right? We kind of just get used to the status quo. And that's what part of us, we're used to that. We're comfortable in that, right? It feels safe. And so we don't like being pushed outside of our comfort zones. But the byproduct is that we don't really grow, right? We don't really stretch ourselves and go beyond that because we are just kind of sitting in that same safe space. And so when these changes come along, it kind of forces us or pushes us and stretches us in ways that we hadn't been before. And so it causes us as a byproduct to grow, right? As we adapt to these new situations. And especially if we're doing these other things that I already talked about, where we're building resilience and we're reflecting on where we want our life to go, right? We're going to be growing, right? We're going to be developing. And so we should start seeing ourselves in that new way, right? See that now we are becoming something different than we were before. And so we should recognize that. We should see ourselves in that new way, right? And it's empowering when we do that. So we're being shaped, we're being molded. And so we should really push into that new self, right? Push into those positive aspects of how we're changing, of how we're growing, and how we're learning to really feel that more and to see ourselves in that new space. And this is certainly going to be true for my son, right? He's moving off. This is going to be a big change for him, and I know he's feeling anxious and apprehensive about it because it is such a huge change. But it's going to be such an amazing opportunity for him to grow and to see himself in this new light, and for us to see him in this new light as he becomes more independent and is kind of out there on his own. So it's scary, but it's also this kind of amazing transformation that can happen in the midst of change. And so, are you allowing yourself that opportunity? Just take a moment and ask yourself that. Are you allowing yourself to see yourself in a new light in this change that's happened? Because I think a lot of times we don't. We're so busy just stressing out about it and maybe resisting it and pushing back against it and all those things that we don't stop to think, how am I growing from this? How am I becoming a new, better version of myself? And that can be difficult, right? Because it causes us to really have to lean into, what am I learning? What can I learn from this situation? Even if it's not a change that I wanted, right? Even if it's a change that I am not happy about, that I wish it hadn't happened. I wish it was a different way. I wish it was like how it used to be. But nevertheless, it happened, right? This is where we are now. So even in the midst of those kind of unwanted changes, we can still grow. We can still see ourselves in a new light. And so in this new version of yourself, what are you prioritizing? What does this new person that you're becoming look like? Who do you want it to be? That's a great question to ask, right? Who do I want to be? Who am I growing into? And it's not that you're like not being you anymore. This is still you, right? But this is just you in light of this new change. This is you in light of these new challenges that you're facing, that you're growing because of. So it's still you. It's just a new version of you. So we should embrace that and move into it. And then I have one more left that I want to share that I think is a good one. Reflect and realign with a coaching conversation, right? So this is basically an opportunity to have some help with this, right? It's difficult to do on our own. And so I have found it to be actually very beneficial to be able to have a conversation with a coach and kind of talk through these things, right? And so, as many of you know, I've started and own my own coaching business. And so I've been coaching people and I've been coached. I've been experiencing a lot of coaching from others as I've been trained in how to do this. And I found it so beneficial when experiencing big changes like this that I have someone to talk through it with. And it's not that they're giving me advice. It's not that they're telling me, oh, you just need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do the other. That's not what this coaching's about. Coaching's really just about you being able to think through whatever the issue is, right? Whatever you're wanting to work on, right? Whatever you're wanting to create for yourself, right? Get clarity on exactly what that is and figure out how to get there, right? And so in change is a tremendous opportunity to have that, right? Where you're able to think through what this new life is going to be like, what you really want from it, and get clarity on, how do I get there, right? How do I get to where I want to be in the midst of this change? And so if that's you and you're facing some big changes, maybe you're going through them or you're about to go through them, and you would like to have a coaching conversation, I would love to offer you one as a gift. Feel free to reach out to me and we can talk through that. And again, I'm not coming with lots of recommendations as an expert on change, right? I'm just talking to you today as someone who's experienced change, right? And so the biggest insights you're going to get are going to come from you, right? You're going to know what is best for you. And so the coaching conversation is just an opportunity for that. But in reality, I can't really fully explain what coaching is like. I honestly just invite you to experience it for yourself, and you can see for yourself what it's like. And that's really what it is, right? So do feel free to reach out, or if maybe you know someone that is going through a big change in life now, and you can offer that. I give you permission to offer a gifted coaching session to them as well. And if there's any particular topic that you would like me to talk about, right? If there's anything that you would that maybe you're grappling with, you would like to hear a little bit about, feel free to also leave that in the comments, and I'd look forward to hearing from you. All right, you guys have a great evening. Thank you so much.